Eminem's journey from a troubled kid in Detroit to becoming one of the most influential figures in hip-hop is nothing short of legendary. Known for his razor-sharp lyrics, boundary-pushing themes, and unflinching authenticity, Marshall Bruce Mathers III broke through barriers and reshaped the rap game, proving that talent knows no racial or cultural boundaries. In this video, we dive into the life and legacy of the rap god, exploring how a white boy from a predominantly black genre defied expectations and reinvented the sound and style of hip-hop forever. Ready for it? Let's go! Eminem's early life was filled with instability, hardship, and a sense of abandonment that would later deeply influence his music. Eminem's father left shortly after he was born, leaving him and his mother, Debbie Mathers, to fend for themselves. The absence of a father figure would become one of the most formative elements in Eminem's life, affecting not only his childhood but also the themes he explored in his music. This sense of abandonment created a lingering sense of rejection, anger, and confusion, emotions that he would later channel into his lyrics, making his songs resonate deeply with listeners. In his youth, Eminem made several attempts to reach out to his father, writing letters in the hope of establishing some kind of relationship. However, these attempts went unanswered, which only deepened his feelings of rejection and loneliness. He grew up wondering why he was never deemed worthy of his father's love, a question that became a recurring theme in his music. The absence of his father left a gap in his life that Eminem would struggle with for years, manifesting in lyrics that explored themes of pain, family conflict, and self-worth. Eminem's relationship with his mother, Debbie, was equally complicated and challenging. Debbie faced numerous struggles of her own, including mental health issues and substance abuse, both of which cast a shadow over Eminem's childhood. Reports suggest that Debbie struggled with a personality disorder, which contributed to erratic and often manipulative behavior. Eminem's portrayal of her as controlling and unstable reflects a childhood marked by frequent confrontations and an ever-present sense of instability. In addition, Debbie allegedly faked illnesses, a pattern known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care to draw attention or sympathy to themselves. This pattern reportedly led to her over-medicating Eminem and further contributing to the chaotic environment he grew up in. Living in this challenging environment, Eminem was forced to grow up quickly and develop a resilience that would shape his character and music. With his mother's instability, his father's abandonment, and the relentless reality of poverty, Eminem was left to navigate his childhood largely on his own. Growing up in a tough, predominantly African-American neighborhood in Detroit added another layer of adversity. As a young white boy in a genre predominantly defined by black artists, Eminem faced skepticism and even ridicule from peers and others in the hip-hop community. Nevertheless, his passion for rap and his desire to escape his circumstances drove him to develop his craft relentlessly. Eminem's early school years were anything but typical, marked by chaos, instability, and a constant sense of dislocation. Before he even dropped out in 9th grade, his mother, Debbie Mathers, estimated that Eminem attended over 30 different schools. The reason behind these frequent moves was largely financial instability, stemming from Debbie's struggles to keep the family afloat. The constant change in environments made it impossible for Eminem to build lasting friendships, maintain a sense of continuity, or settle into a routine. Each new school presented a fresh challenge, and every time he moved, he was forced to start over socially and academically. For a young boy, the upheaval of constantly changing schools could have been overwhelming, but for Eminem, it became the foundation of a lifelong struggle with feelings of alienation. His inability to form lasting relationships in school, coupled with the difficulties of adjusting to new academic systems, compounded the emotional and social issues he already faced at home. These early experiences of displacement and exclusion would become central themes in his music, where he often explored feelings of not fitting in, being misunderstood, and facing an indifferent world. When he finally entered high school, Eminem's situation only worsened. By then, he had already repeated the ninth grade 3 times, struggling with both academic performance and an increasing lack of interest in school. The frequent absences, due in part to skipping classes and bouts of depression, led to his poor grades. His lack of motivation in the classroom was inextricably tied to the constant instability he had faced. School was not a place of learning or opportunity. It was another arena where he felt like an outsider. His frustrations with his situation were compounded by bullying, which further eroded his confidence and made school a hostile environment for him. Perhaps one of the most defining and traumatic incidents of Eminem's early years occurred when he was just 9 years old. As a child, Eminem was already an outsider, poor, frequently moving from one school to another and growing up in a predominantly black neighborhood in Detroit as a white boy. This sense of being different made him a target for bullying, but it was one particular incident that would have a lasting impact on him: a violent attack by a school bully named D'Angelo Bailey. The bullying incident escalated when Bailey attacked Eminem so severely that he ended up in a coma for several days. This violent encounter was not only physically damaging, but it also left deep emotional scars on Eminem. The trauma of the event shaped the way he viewed the world and further reinforced his feelings of anger and mistrust. In his 1999 track Brain Damage, Eminem would later describe this horrifying incident in vivid detail, channeling the pain and humiliation he had endured into his music. The song is a powerful reflection of how this early bullying episode and his school years in general contributed to his growing sense of rebellion and his antagonistic relationship with authority. In the aftermath of the attack, Eminem's mother, Debbie, sought legal recourse, attempting to sue the school for failing to protect her son. She argued that the school's negligence had allowed the attack to happen and that the injury had seriously affected Eminem's life. However, the case was dismissed, which only added to the frustration and anger that Eminem already felt toward the world. His mother's legal battle was ultimately unsuccessful, but it highlighted the lack of support and care that Eminem received throughout his childhood. This sense of being overlooked, ignored, or dismissed would become one of the central motifs in his later work, particularly in his exploration of themes like disillusionment with authority and systemic failure. Eminem's journey into the world of hip-hop began in an unexpected yet profoundly impactful way through the influence of his uncle, Ronnie. Ronnie, a key figure in Eminem's early life, played a pivotal role in introducing him to the genre that would eventually define his career. It was in the early 1980s when Ronnie played Ice-T's Reckless from the Breaking soundtrack for a young Eminem. This moment sparked an undeniable connection between the young boy and the world of rap, a genre that resonated deeply with him from the moment he heard it. It was more than just music. It was a form of expression, a new way for him to channel the confusion and anger he felt in his personal life. Hip-hop was a means of communication, a voice for the marginalized and misunderstood, much like he felt. Eminem's relationship with Ronnie, however, would not last. In 1991, Ronnie tragically took his own life. The loss hit Eminem hard, as Ronnie had been a father figure to him in a way that his biological father had not been. Growing up without a consistent father figure had already left a void in his life, and Ronnie's death deepened that emptiness. The trauma of losing someone he looked up to in such a devastating manner would echo throughout Eminem's music. He has referenced Ronnie's death in several songs, notably in Cleaning Out My Closet and Stan. In these tracks, the pain of Ronnie's suicide is palpable, and it reveals the deep emotional scars that loss left on the young rapper. The experience of dealing with grief, particularly for a father figure who had been such a positive influence in his life, would profoundly shape the way Eminem approached both his music and his own sense of identity. Despite the emotional turmoil caused by this loss, Eminem found solace in his music. At the time, his mother, Debbie, was often preoccupied with her own issues, including her struggles with mental health and substance abuse, leaving Eminem with plenty of time to himself. He used this time to immerse himself in rap, writing lyrics, and creating music when his mother was out playing bingo. His passion for the art form only grew stronger as he honed his craft. At 14, Eminem began rapping in earnest, quickly finding his voice in a genre that was still in its infancy in mainstream culture. His early performances were raw and full of intensity, revealing his natural talent for wordplay, storytelling, and delivery. During this time, Eminem adopted the name M&M, a play on the initials of his real name, Marshall Mathers. The name was inspired by the iconic chocolate candy, and it was a nod to his desire to create a memorable stage name. However, as his reputation grew and the realities of the music industry began to set in, he feared potential legal issues from the candy company, which led him to evolve the name into Eminem. The rebranding from Eminem to Eminem marked a significant step in his evolution as an artist, signaling both a practical and artistic shift as he began to carve out his own identity within the rap world. One afternoon, while skipping class at the age of 16, Eminem took a leap that would change his life forever. He ventured to Osborne High School to promote an amateur rap show, a seemingly casual decision that would have long-lasting consequences. It was there that he met a fellow aspiring rapper named Proof, who would go on to become one of Eminem's closest friends and musical collaborators. The two immediately clicked, starting a spontaneous freestyle session right there on the sidewalk. This impromptu rap battle was not only a test of their skills, but also the beginning of a deep and lasting friendship. Proof became a mentor, confidant, and a constant presence in Eminem's life, helping him navigate the often harsh and competitive world of hip-hop. Their friendship would later be immortalized in songs and would significantly influence Eminem's rise to fame. Rapping provided Eminem with a much-needed outlet, a way to escape the tumultuous reality of his life and the instability that came with it. He developed an alter ego called Slim Shady, which allowed him to express the darker, angrier side of himself that he often kept hidden. Slim Shady became a way for Eminem to channel his frustrations and aggression, unleashing a lyrical style and flow that was unlike anything many had heard before. This persona was raw, unfiltered, and unafraid to push boundaries. Through Slim Shady, Eminem was able to release the pent-up anger he had accumulated over years of hardship, anger at his absent father, his strained relationship with his mother, his experiences with bullying, and his overall sense of being an outsider. In the mid-1990s, Eminem found himself working as a cook at Gilbert's Lodge, a local restaurant in St. Clair Shores, a suburb of Detroit. While the job itself wasn't glamorous, it provided him with both the space and the rhythm to immerse himself further into the world of hip-hop, which had become his true passion. Working long hours at the grill, Eminem had a lot of time to think and to focus on his music. His headphones were a constant companion, as he listened to hip-hop tirelessly while flipping burgers and manning the stove. Music became his escape from the turmoil of his personal life, a world in which he felt increasingly trapped. At this point in his life, Eminem was determined to make it as a rapper, and his drive to succeed in the hip-hop scene grew stronger. He began performing at local clubs, seeking any opportunity to get on stage, and honing his skills in rap battles and open mic contests. His reputation as a talented rhymer was steadily growing. His performances in the underground Detroit scene caught the attention of other local rappers who began to respect his technical abilities and wordplay. At the same time, Eminem traveled to New York for rap contests, the mecca of hip-hop culture, where he competed against some of the best up-and-coming artists in the country. These experiences broadened his understanding of the rap world and helped him sharpen his craft. But it was clear that while he was gaining respect in certain circles, he still had a long way to go. One of the major cultural touchstones during this period was the release of the License to Ill album by the Beastie Boys. Their mix of punk and hip-hop had a massive impact on Eminem, who immersed himself in the album, studying their flow, style, and irreverence. The Beastie Boys' success helped open doors for a new wave of white rappers in the genre, and their sound and antics served as an inspiration for a young Eminem who was trying to carve out a space for himself in a predominantly black industry. The album was emblematic of a time when hip-hop was crossing over into the mainstream, and Eminem was determined to follow in the footsteps of artists like the Beastie Boys, even if it meant facing considerable obstacles. Despite his growing reputation in Detroit's underground rap scene, Eminem's personal life was in turmoil. His relationship with his mother, Debbie, was increasingly strained, marked by constant conflicts and a lack of understanding. Their relationship had long been fraught with tension, stemming from both her mental health issues and their financial instability. These tensions played out in a very public way, often spilling over into Eminem's music. In addition to the clashes with his mother, Eminem's relationship with his girlfriend, Kim Scott, was equally tumultuous. In 1995, Kim gave birth to their daughter, Haley, on Christmas Day. The arrival of his daughter should have been a joyous occasion, but it became another layer of complexity in his already difficult life. His relationship with Kim was volatile, full of emotional highs and lows, and it added to the stress he was experiencing. One of the most persistent sources of frustration during this time was his mother's constant interference in his life. Debbie would regularly call him at work, often interrupting his shifts, which only worsened the tension between them. According to Eminem, the waitresses at Gilbert's Lodge would get so fed up with her calls that they started hanging up on her. Each call deepened his sense of frustration and alienation. To cope, Eminem would retreat further into his music, using his headphones as a barrier to block out the noise of his personal life. The music became a way for him to drown out the anger and pain that constantly threatened to overwhelm him. He would often scribble down his thoughts, frustrations, and lyrics on napkins while working at the grill, channeling his bottled-up emotions into his craft. These snippets of anger-filled lyricism would later form the basis of some of his earliest work, as he began to refine his voice as an artist. Eminem's debut EP, Infinite, was released in 1996 through a small local label in Detroit. The project was a far cry from the raw, aggressive style he would later become known for. On Infinite, he experimented with a more subdued, introspective style, influenced by the smooth, jazz-infused beats that were common in the Detroit rap scene at the time. Despite his local reputation and the effort he put into the project, Infinite was a commercial failure. It sold only about 1,000 copies, and many of those were given away for free as Eminem tried to generate interest in his work. The album's lackluster sales were a blow to his confidence, but they were not the end of his journey. Instead, Infinite became a stepping stone, a learning experience that allowed Eminem to understand more about his own voice and where he wanted to take his music. In the spring of 1997, Eminem took a major step in his musical journey by recording the Slim Shady EP. This project was a pivotal moment for the young rapper, marking the evolution of his alter ego, Slim Shady, and unveiling the raw, unfiltered side of his personality. The EP was an unapologetic collection of tracks that explored themes of violence, mental instability, substance abuse, and sexual acts. Yet beneath the shock value of the lyrics, Eminem also touched on deeper issues such as poverty, personal trauma, and the breakdown of his relationships, particularly with Kim Scott, the mother of his daughter Haley. The Slim Shady persona, which was filled with sadistic, self-deprecating humor, was an outlet for Eminem to channel his anger and frustration. The character was deliberately provocative and dark, allowing him to express the intense emotions he often kept hidden in his everyday life. At the time of recording the Slim Shady EP, Eminem's life was in turmoil. He and Kim Scott were living in a crime-infested neighborhood in Detroit, struggling to make ends meet. The environment around them was dangerous, and their house had been robbed multiple times, adding an additional layer of stress to an already unstable situation. On top of this, Eminem had recently been fired from his job at Gilbert's Lodge, and he and Kim had been kicked out of their home, further compounding the financial and emotional strain. The constant instability led Eminem to make a decision that would alter the course of his life. Faced with limited options, he decided to go all in on his rap career, fully committing to his dream of becoming a successful artist. His passion for music and his desire to escape his difficult circumstances led him to take a bold gamble. He packed up and headed to Los Angeles in 1997, with the hopes of making a name for himself at the Rap Olympics, a prominent rap battle competition. The Rap Olympics was a major event in the underground hip-hop scene, attracting some of the best unsigned rappers from around the country. Eminem, who had already made a name for himself in Detroit's local rap scene, saw the competition as his chance to prove himself on a national level. He performed with the same intensity and skill that had made him a respected figure in Detroit, but despite his efforts, he did not take home the top prize. Eminem placed second in the competition, which was a bitter disappointment, especially given the high stakes of the moment. However, despite his loss, something unexpected happened that would change the trajectory of his career. An intern at Interscope Records, a major record label, was in the audience and was struck by Eminem's performance. Impressed by his talent, the intern asked for a copy of the Slim Shady EP, which was still a relatively unknown project at the time. The intern passed the EP on to none other than Dr. Dre, the legendary producer and member of NWA, who had been a major influence on Eminem's music. Dre had been instrumental in shaping the sound of hip-hop in the late 80s and early 90s, and Eminem had long been an admirer of his work. When Dr. Dre listened to the Slim Shady EP, he was immediately captivated by Eminem's unique style and raw energy. He recognized that Eminem had something special, a voice that was unlike anything he had heard before in the rap world. He knew he had to find the artist behind the EP, and thus began the beginning of an iconic partnership. Eminem, who had idolized Dr. Dre for years, was both thrilled and nervous at the prospect of working with him. The opportunity to collaborate with one of his heroes was a dream come true, but it also filled him with anxiety. He had always admired Dre's work with NWA and his later success as a producer, and the idea of working with him was both exhilarating and intimidating. However, Dre was equally impressed by Eminem's skill and vision, and the two quickly formed a close working relationship. What started as a mentor-mentee dynamic soon developed into a deep friendship, and Dre became a crucial figure in shaping Eminem's career. Eminem's nervousness about working with Dre soon turned into a sense of camaraderie, and their bond helped fuel Eminem's confidence as an artist. Dre's guidance was instrumental in the creation of the Slim Shady LP, which would go on to become Eminem's major label debut. The album's release marked a turning point in Eminem's career, propelling him into the mainstream and solidifying his place in the hip-hop world. The album's success was driven by its provocative content, which resonated with a wide audience, and by Eminem's ability to blend humor, anger, and vulnerability in his lyrics. When the Slim Shady LP was released in February 1999, Eminem's career, which had been built on years of struggle, self-doubt, and underground hustle, finally exploded into the mainstream. The album was an immediate success, and its impact on the music industry was profound. By the end of the year, the Slim Shady LP had gone triple platinum, a testament to its wide-reaching influence and popularity. This marked a major milestone in Eminem's career, as it was his first project with Dr. Dre, who had not only produced the album, but had also taken Eminem under his wing. This partnership was a game-changer for Eminem, and it propelled him from an obscure underground rapper in Detroit to an international superstar almost overnight. The album's success was not just commercial, but also critical. It was praised for its unique blend of dark humor, raw emotion, and technical rap ability. The Slim Shady LP showcased Eminem's signature style of combining witty, biting commentary with brutally honest, often disturbing lyrics. What made the album stand out was Eminem's ability to flip between two very distinct personalities: the sinister, violent alter ego of Slim Shady and the more reflective personal side of Marshall Mathers, the man behind the music. This duality would become a defining characteristic of Eminem's work, and it was evident right from the start. On the Slim Shady LP, Slim Shady represents the dark side of Eminem's personality, a character who is unfiltered, violent, and self-destructive. Through this alter ego, Eminem explored his hatred for his mother, his tumultuous relationship with his wife, Kim Scott, and his complex feelings toward his daughter, Haley. The album was packed with tracks that dealt with these personal issues, some in highly controversial and extreme ways. For example, in the chilling track 97 Bonnie and Clyde, Eminem describes a gruesome, fictional scenario in which he murders his wife Kim and disposes of her body, all while driving with his infant daughter Haley in the car. The song's disturbing content and its raw depiction of Eminem's anger and frustration with his personal life struck a nerve with listeners, and it solidified his reputation as a rapper willing to tackle taboo subjects head-on. In addition to his personal struggles, the Slim Shady LP also marked the beginning of Eminem's penchant for mocking celebrities and the music industry. The album's tracks often contain sharp, satirical takes on fame, popular culture, and the absurdity of the celebrity world. Eminem wasn't afraid to poke fun at other famous figures, taking shots at everyone from mainstream rappers to pop stars, and this self-aware, often comedic approach to fame would become another trademark of his career. The success of the Slim Shady LP laid the foundation for Eminem's next album, the Marshall Mathers LP, which was released in 2000. This album, which would go on to become even more successful than its predecessor, took the themes of the Slim Shady LP and amplified them to new levels. The Marshall Mathers LP was even more personal, with Eminem diving deeper into his inner conflicts, his relationship with his family, and his growing fame. The album was a commercial juggernaut, selling 1.76 million copies in its first week, setting a new record for the fastest-selling rap album of all time. This achievement was particularly remarkable given that Eminem had already faced considerable backlash from critics and the media, who accused him of being too violent, vulgar, and misogynistic. Yet despite this controversy, or perhaps because of it, the Marshall Mathers LP resonated with millions of fans worldwide. The album's success was unprecedented. It sold more than twice as many copies in its first week as Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, which had previously been the benchmark for rap album sales. Even more impressively, the Marshall Mathers LP beat the one-week sales record set by pop icon Britney Spears, becoming the highest-selling album in its debut week by any solo artist. This was a huge accomplishment for Eminem, as it proved that his music, with all its raw intensity and controversial subject matter, had found a massive audience, transcending the boundaries of hip-hop and mainstream music. Eminem's second studio album, the Marshall Mathers LP, released in 2000, was not only a commercial phenomenon but also a cultural earthquake. It shattered records and earned him widespread recognition for his raw talent and unfiltered lyricism. The album was groundbreaking for its controversial content, and it solidified Eminem's position as one of the most polarizing figures in the music industry. The album garnered 4 Grammy nominations, including Best Rap Album, which caused an uproar in the media and among some critics. The reactions to Eminem's rise to prominence were mixed. He had a legion of devoted fans, but he also attracted vehement criticism from groups that felt his music was dangerous and irresponsible. His explicit lyrics and provocative imagery made him a lightning rod for debates about censorship, freedom of speech, and the influence of music on young people. One of the most notorious tracks from the Marshall Mathers LP was The Real Slim Shady. The song's catchy, upbeat production belied its searing critique of mainstream pop culture. Eminem used the track to mock and ridicule the biggest pop stars of the time, including NSYNC, Britney Spears, and the Backstreet Boys. His disdain for these artists, who represented the sanitized mainstream pop world, became a central theme of the song. He positioned himself as the antithesis of the mainstream, mocking the image of polished, cookie-cutter celebrities in favor of a more chaotic, rebellious identity. The song, with its biting humor and sharp social commentary, exemplified Eminem's ability to mix comedy with criticism, making him a voice for outsiders while alienating mainstream culture. But it wasn't just pop stars who became targets of Eminem's ire. In one of the most shocking and controversial songs on the album, Kim, Eminem unleashed his fury in a 6-minute visceral and violent tirade against his ex-wife, Kim Scott. The song is infamous for its brutal depiction of Eminem's emotions, which veer into unrestrained rage and violence. In it, Eminem takes on the persona of someone driven to the edge of sanity by betrayal and heartache, and the track is filled with disturbing imagery. Kim is unsettling not only for its aggressive tone and violent narrative, but also for its lack of traditional structure. There's almost no chorus, just a relentless outpouring of anger and emotion. The song's graphic content was so extreme that even the explicit version was heavily censored in some instances, making it a lightning rod for debates about artistic freedom, emotional expression, and the limits of what can be presented in music. Eminem's willingness to tackle uncomfortable topics didn't stop at his personal relationships. In I'm Back, he took a more direct aim at the public backlash he had received in the wake of his rise to fame, including the media's portrayal of him as a negative influence on children. Eminem also controversially seemed to sympathize with the Columbine shooters just a year after the tragic school shooting in Colorado. This drew intense criticism and further intensified the debates around Eminem's role as a cultural figure. Critics argued that his lyrics encouraged violence and had the potential to influence impressionable listeners, while his defenders contended that his music was a form of catharsis and artistic expression. As the album progressed, Eminem's persona grew even more complex and darker. On Kill You, he rapped about harming his own mother, Debbie Mathers, which was part of his ongoing public feud with her. In the track, Eminem's anger was palpable, and his portrayal of their toxic relationship seemed to cross all moral boundaries. The song's shocking and violent imagery sparked outrage, but it also underscored the cathartic and confrontational nature of his music. Kill You served as a continuation of Eminem's refusal to conform to societal expectations, especially when it came to dealing with personal trauma and emotional pain. His willingness to present himself as both a victim and an aggressor made him an even more divisive figure. Meanwhile, in Stan, one of his most iconic songs, Eminem explored the dangerous obsession that his fans sometimes developed with him. The track tells the story of a disturbed fan who becomes increasingly unhinged as he writes to Eminem, believing that their connection is personal and deep. Stan was a departure from the rage and violence of many of the other tracks on the album, as it focused more on the psychological and emotional aspects of fandom and the darker side of celebrity. The song's narrative, in which the fan ultimately takes his own life, served as both a critique of obsessive fan culture and a reflection of Eminem's own struggles with the pressures of fame. The track's haunting chorus, sung by Dido, only added to its eerie atmosphere, cementing it as one of Eminem's most memorable and influential songs. In the late 90s and early 2000s, rap was evolving. While hip-hop had once glorified street life, crime, and gang culture, the genre began to shift toward a new era of celebration, one that focused more on luxury, fame, and partying. Artists like Puff Daddy, Jay-Z, and the like began to dominate, painting a picture of success filled with designer clothes, expensive cars, and extravagant lifestyles. Luxury became the primary theme of the mainstream rap scene, and the genre's narrative softened, veering away from the gritty realism that had defined early rap. But Eminem entered this era like a wrecking ball. His music cut through the emerging trend of bling, yachts, and mansion parties with a rawness and brutality that made him stand out like a sore thumb. If the mainstream rap world was focused on success and indulgence, Eminem was bent on flipping the narrative. He was the underdog, proudly representing the struggles of the downtrodden and rejected. While other rappers were boasting about their newfound riches, Eminem remained anchored in his past, embracing his impoverished roots. His lyrics were filled with anger, violence, and resentment. Not the kinds of emotions that sell luxury watches, but the kind that resonated with people who felt they had been left behind by the shiny promises of mainstream culture. If you had a mansion, Eminem would burn it down just to piss you off. If you were raking in cash, he'd remind you of the struggles that came before that. His music was a direct confrontation with the mainstream ethos of the time. His lyrics were unrelenting, raw, and often vulgar. He rapped about murder, violence, drugs, and the darker sides of life, topics that many mainstream artists had largely avoided in favor of more celebratory or aspirational themes. In a world where rap was becoming more polished and radio-friendly, Eminem proudly embraced chaos. He wasn't trying to be cool by the new standards of the genre. Instead, he reveled in discomfort, confronting topics that made people uncomfortable, and in doing so, he built a persona of shocking intensity. But his brutal honesty didn't come without consequence. As Eminem's popularity grew, so did the backlash. Special interest groups, including parents' groups and politicians, took issue with his violent, misogynistic, and profane lyrics. Protests were organized in the streets. His music regularly played on the airwaves, became a target of calls for censorship. Parents' groups feared that Eminem's music was a bad influence on their children, believing his lyrics were too graphic and potentially harmful. Eminem was not just an artist anymore. He had become the face of a culture war. One of the most dramatic moments of this era came during the 2000 MTV Video Music Awards. The event, typically a celebration of the biggest stars in music and pop culture, witnessed an unforgettable moment that captured the cultural clash between Eminem's raw energy and the mainstream entertainment industry's glossy image. As the ceremony progressed, comedian and actor Jim Carrey, known for his zany sense of humor, took to the stage. With his usual antics and rapid-fire jokes, Carrey captivated the audience with his over-the-top persona. But when he made a joke about Eminem, it wasn't just another bit. It was a reflection of the societal unease that surrounded Eminem's rise to fame. By the early 2000s, Eminem had achieved a level of fame that transcended the realm of music. His celebrity status wasn't just a product of his musical talent, it was a cultural phenomenon. Eminem wasn't just another rapper rising through the ranks of the hip-hop world. He was the architect who bridged the gap between underground hip-hop and the mainstream, making rap music accessible to a massive audience that had previously been untouched by the genre. In the late 90s and early 2000s, rap was still largely seen as a form of rebellion and expression tied to black urban experiences. But Eminem, a white rapper from Detroit, became the unexpected ambassador for a new era of hip-hop, bringing it into the bedrooms of suburban white teens who had never thought much about the music before. His ability to connect with this audience, through a combination of authenticity, aggression, and vulnerability, made him a unique figure in music history. Fast forward to November 8, 2002. Eminem was about to hit new heights with the release of 8 Mile. The film, loosely based on his own rise to fame, was an instant hit, becoming both a critical and commercial success. For most musicians who attempt to transition into acting, this kind of success would be a distant dream. But Eminem wasn't just another celebrity trying to capitalize on his fame. 8 Mile was a project that resonated with audiences, as it explored the themes of struggle, identity, and perseverance, all central to Eminem's own journey. The movie depicted the raw reality of growing up on the fringes of society and the ambition that drives someone to defy the odds and claim a place at the top. The timing of 8 Mile's release couldn't have been more perfect. Just 17 days before the film hit theaters, Eminem released Lose Yourself, a track that would go on to become his most iconic song and serve as the soundtrack to the film's key battle rap scene. Lose Yourself didn't just capture the essence of the movie, it became its own cultural force. The song resonated with listeners on a deep level. Its stirring lyrics, powerful beat, and driving rhythm encapsulated the feeling of seizing an opportunity and not letting it slip away. The opening notes became instantly recognizable, forever etched in the minds of fans as the quintessential motivational anthem. With lines like, "His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on his sweater already, mom's spaghetti," the song became emblematic of both the nerves and determination that come with stepping into the spotlight. Lose Yourself was more than just a song. It became an anthem for anyone chasing a dream, fighting against the odds, and pushing through adversity. Its lyrics were a call to action, urging listeners to take advantage of the moment, to recognize the importance of seizing opportunities when they come. With its universal appeal, the track captured the spirit of battle rap in its purest form. It wasn't just about proving yourself on stage, it was about fighting for something more, a place in the world, a recognition of your worth, a chance to break free from the constraints of your past. The track became a soundtrack to the underdog, and it resonated far beyond the world of hip-hop. The cultural impact of Lose Yourself was undeniable, and it soon became clear that this was a song that would go down in history. At the 2003 Academy Awards, Eminem made history when he became the first hip-hop artist to win the Oscar for Best Original Song. Winning an Oscar for Lose Yourself wasn't just a victory for Eminem. It was a victory for hip-hop as a whole. It was a recognition of rap music as a legitimate form of artistic expression, one that could stand shoulder to shoulder with any other genre. The win represented a breaking down of barriers, proving that the music that had once been seen as rebellious or controversial could now be celebrated and respected by the mainstream. On May 21, 2002, Eminem released The Eminem Show, an album that would go on to shatter records and solidify his place as one of the most influential figures in hip-hop. The album, filled with rapid-fire, witty lyrics and a mix of serious introspection and outrageous humor, quickly became the fastest-selling album of all time, a record it would hold until Taylor Swift's 1989 overtook it years later. It marked a new chapter in Eminem's career, one that showcased his ever-evolving artistic prowess while also reflecting the turbulence of his personal life. The Eminem Show stands out not only for its commercial success, but for its thematic depth. On tracks like Without Me, Superman, and Business, Eminem flaunted his trademark irreverence, taking shots at celebrities, politicians, and the media while asserting his dominance in the rap game. These songs were quintessential Eminem in their mix of humor, satire, and biting commentary. His characteristically playful approach to his lyrics, roasting his mother, trash-talking mainstream culture, and poking fun at his critics, were all on full display. In particular, the catchy and energetic Without Me delivered a mock-heroic self-assuredness that exemplified the album's tone. Brash, fearless, and unafraid to make enemies. Yet while these songs may feel lighthearted or whimsical on the surface, The Eminem Show was much more than just a vehicle for shock value or comedy. In many ways, the album is a reflection of the complicated and often painful reality of Eminem's life at the time. Beneath the clownish antics and the playful jab at pop culture, the album also explored darker and more vulnerable themes. Eminem's relationship with his mother, his ongoing struggles with his family, and the pressure of his newfound fame were all explored with a biting, self-aware honesty that few artists at the time dared to tackle. Songs like Cleaning Out My Closet offer an unflinching look at the turmoil within his family, and Superman delves into his complicated relationships with women, particularly his ex-wife Kim Scott. But to fully understand the Eminem Show, one must rewind to June 2000, a time when Eminem's life was on the verge of unraveling. At this point, Eminem was still in a tumultuous relationship with Kim, and his personal life had begun to spiral out of control. One of the key events that would influence his work during this time was an incident that took place outside a Detroit bar. Eminem caught Kim making out with another man, a betrayal that sent him into a violent rage. In the heat of the moment, he pulled out a pistol and struck the man, earning him his first felony charge of the year. This was a pivotal moment for the artist, one that underscored just how deeply his personal struggles were beginning to bleed into his public persona. The incident with Kim not only resulted in legal trouble for Eminem, but it also highlighted his deep emotional scars and the intensity of his anger. The pistol-whipping charge was soon followed by a second legal battle, this time stemming from a brawl with members of the Insane Clown Posse, a Detroit-based rap group that had previously been a part of his local scene. This second altercation only added fuel to the fire, and it felt as though Eminem's world was crumbling beneath him. The weight of these charges loomed large over his life, threatening to land him in jail. But instead of succumbing to the pressure, this period of chaos became a wake-up call for Eminem. In the midst of his legal struggles and personal upheaval, he realized that he needed to change his behavior or risk losing everything. The experience became a turning point, one that would ultimately push him to ditch his destructive habits, including his heavy reliance on alcohol and prescription pills. For many fans, the apex of Eminem's career came with the release of his first 3 albums, the Slim Shady LP, the Mathers LP, and the Eminem Show. These albums, released within a span of just 4 years, solidified Eminem as not only a top-tier lyricist, but as a pop culture phenomenon. Each album showcased a different dimension of his artistry, which can be distilled into 3 key aspects: the clown, the confessor, and the crusader. In the Slim Shady LP, 1999, Eminem introduced the world to his alter ego, Slim Shady, a chaotic, often violent character who reveled in shock value and twisted humor. This album established his willingness to push boundaries as he delivered savage diss tracks and lyrical acrobatics that left many audiences stunned, laughing, or disturbed. The clown persona was characterized by exaggerated absurdity, a tongue-in-cheek approach to controversial topics, and an uncompromising, in-your-face attitude that made Slim Shady a cultural force. By the time the Mathers LP 2000 arrived, Eminem's persona evolved into something much darker. Here, he became the confessor, exploring his inner turmoil, his relationship with fame, and the scars left by his difficult childhood and troubled family life. Tracks like Stan and The Way I Am offered an introspective, almost confessional tone, revealing the emotional and psychological weight of living under the microscope. The album addressed the pressures of fame, his battles with his critics, and the destructive relationships in his life. But the humor was still there, though now more sarcastic and biting, as Eminem shredded the mainstream music industry and societal expectations with songs like The Real Slim Shady. Then came The Eminem Show, 2002, where he stepped fully into the role of the crusader. This album saw Eminem using his platform to attack the media, political figures, and the hypocrisy he saw in society. Tracks like Without Me and Cleaning Out My Closet displayed his boldness, tackling themes of censorship, personal vendettas, and the chaos of fame. Eminem became the voice of the outsider, the underdog, and the rebellious spirit that sought to challenge the status quo. The album resonated with millions of fans who saw Eminem as someone who was unafraid to speak truth to power, even when that truth was messy and uncomfortable. In many ways, if Eminem's career had ended with The Eminem Show, it would have been a fitting conclusion. His trajectory was clear. He was at the peak of his powers, having firmly established himself as a major force in music and culture. However, as we know, Eminem's story was far from over, and what came next would only continue to add layers to his already complex persona. Despite achieving unimaginable success, Eminem's presence in the rap game remained unpredictable. He wasn't just a solo artist dominating the charts, he was also a key figure in the careers of other artists. His impact went beyond his own albums. He was the cosign that other up-and-coming artists sought. Eminem had the power to elevate fellow rappers, and his endorsement meant something. One prime example is his collaboration on Dr. Dre's iconic 2001 album, particularly on the track Forgot About Dre. In just a few verses, Eminem proved he wasn't just a guest rapper, he was a force in his own right. His blistering verse alongside Dre's was a moment in rap history, one that solidified Eminem as one of the genre's most important figures. Eminem's connection to his Detroit roots remained strong, and another key part of his career was his role in D12, a group he was both a part of and one of its most high-profile members. D12, known for its dark humor, eccentric personalities, and unrestrained lyricism, dropped two albums, Devil's Night, 2001, and D12 World, 2004. These albums, though often overshadowed by Eminem's solo work, were a critical part of his artistic expression and cultural footprint. Tracks like Purple Pills and Fight Music showcased the group's wild, often absurd verses, but it was Eminem's contributions that often stood out the most. His verse in Fight Music, in particular, was an unforgettable display of his technical prowess and ability to match the group's chaotic energy. Eminem's career wasn't just shaped by his raw talent and provocative lyrics, it was also deeply impacted by his entrepreneurial spirit. One of the most significant chapters of his professional life was the creation of Shady Records, the label he co-founded with his manager, Paul Rosenberg, in 2005-1999. What started as a way for Eminem to manage his own music empire would go on to influence the entire rap landscape, particularly with the success of 50 Cent. In 2002, Shady Records signed 50 Cent, a rapper from Queens who had already made waves in the underground scene with his gritty mixtapes. The label's investment paid off in spectacular fashion when 50 Cent released his debut album Get Rich or Die Tryin' in 2003. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and sold an astonishing 800,000 copies in its first week, eventually moving over 12 million units worldwide. This commercial success not only cemented 50 Cent's place in hip-hop, but also solidified Eminem's role as an influential figure in the industry beyond his own music. 50 Cent's rise to stardom was a defining moment for Shady Records and showed that Eminem's business acumen could rival his artistic talents. Obi Trice, another artist on Shady Records, also found success with his 2003 debut Cheers. Without the aid of a major radio single, Cheers still sold 2 million copies, helped by Trice's partnership with Eminem. While Obi Trice's success wasn't as explosive as 50 Cent's, his debut helped to showcase Eminem's knack for spotting raw talent and fostering careers. Shady Records wasn't just a vehicle for Eminem's own artistry, it became a springboard for the success of other promising artists, solidifying its place in hip-hop's mainstream. For about 4 years, Shady Records and Eminem himself dominated popular culture. Eminem's own meteoric rise, paired with the commercial success of his label's roster, positioned Shady Records as a titan of the early 2000s rap scene. Eminem's ability to turn his personal struggles into platinum-selling albums made him an unstoppable force, with the label amplifying his influence. However, as time wore on, the whirlwind success began to slow, and a new chapter of Eminem's career unfolded, one marred by personal demons, health struggles, and a noticeable dip in the quality of his music. The beginning of this decline became most apparent with the release of Encore in November 2004. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and was commercially successful, selling over 21 million copies and going 5 times platinum. However, the critical reception was far less favorable. The album, for all its commercial success, lacked the sharpness, intensity, and originality of his previous work. The lead single, Just Lose It, was widely considered a disappointment, receiving mixed reviews for its lackluster execution and embarrassing music video. It felt as though Eminem was phoning it in, relying on gimmicks and tired themes rather than pushing the boundaries of his art as he had done on previous albums. For the first time in his career, an Eminem album didn't win the Grammy for Best Rap Album, a sign that his creative output was faltering. The raw emotion and clever wordplay that had previously defined his music were overshadowed by a sense of complacency. Eminem's decline wasn't just reflected in his music, it was deeply personal as well. By the time Encore was released, Eminem had been battling drug addiction, personal issues, and the weight of his newfound fame. His personal life had become a whirlwind of drama, and this began to reflect in his music, which sounded increasingly like a bad hangover. The themes of anger and frustration that had once energized his tracks were now replaced with an almost forced attempt at humor and irreverence. The album felt more like a collection of filler than a cohesive artistic statement, and fans and critics alike began to see Eminem as someone who had lost his creative edge. The commercial success of Encore couldn't mask the decline in his output, and it became clear that Eminem needed a break. His struggles reached a tipping point after a performance in Detroit in 2005 when he canceled his European tour dates and checked himself into rehab. The decision to take time off was a necessary one, as Eminem had clearly hit a wall, personally, artistically, and professionally. He was no longer the lightning-fast, boundary-pushing rapper who had dominated the late 90s and early 2000s. His personal battles with addiction, mental health, and the pressures of fame had finally caught up with him. The years following Eminem's sharp decline into addiction were some of the darkest in his life and career. After the release of Encore in 2004, his professional and personal worlds began to unravel. His drug use spiraled out of control, and the mental and physical toll of his addictions became painfully evident. He was no longer the provocative, boundary-pushing artist who had once captivated millions. He was a shell of himself, trapped in the clutches of addiction. Eminem's drug use, particularly his addiction to painkillers like Vicodin and Valium, took a devastating toll. At his lowest, he was taking up to 20 pills a day. His physical and mental state deteriorated rapidly. He was gaining weight, losing his sharpness, and finding it difficult to muster the energy to make music, let alone manage his label, Shady Records. His personal struggles were so severe that they bled into his professional life. Shady Records, once the home of rising stars like 50 Cent, was floundering. The 2006 compilation album Eminem Presents, the re-up failed to generate significant attention, and Obi Trice's Second Rounds on Me barely made a dent on the charts. It was clear that Eminem's influence was waning, not just in music, but in his own label's ability to thrive. However, the darkest moment came on April 11th, 2006. Eminem's best friend and longtime collaborator, Proof, was tragically shot and killed in a Detroit nightclub. Proof had been more than just a friend. He was Eminem's ultimate hype man, a member of D12, and a constant source of support in the tumultuous years of Eminem's rise to fame. His death was a devastating blow to Eminem, who had already been struggling with addiction, depression, and the pressures of fame. Proof's murder pushed Eminem to the edge, and for a time, it seemed as if the man who had once ruled the rap game might be done for good. Eminem withdrew even further, retreating from the public eye, and it appeared as though he had retired from music entirely. To many, his career seemed over, reduced to a tragic story of a superstar who had imploded. For the next several years, Eminem was largely absent from the music scene. He remained in a state of near isolation, unable to get out of bed, consumed by grief, guilt, and his addiction. His health deteriorated further, and on one fateful day, he overdosed on methadone, a powerful painkiller. He collapsed in his bathroom, and it was only by sheer luck that he was discovered and rushed to the hospital in time to save his life. Eminem was told that he had been hours away from death, a sobering wake-up call that forced him to confront the reality of his addiction. This near-death experience marked a pivotal moment in his life, and it was the beginning of a slow, painful journey toward recovery. As Eminem entered rehab and started to get clean, he faced a long road to regain control over his life. His weight ballooned during his drug use, a visible sign of the toll addiction had taken on him. His ability to make music, the thing he had once done effortlessly, was clouded by self-doubt and the aftermath of years of substance abuse. His return to music would not be immediate or triumphant. It was going to be a battle. In May 2009, after years of silence and struggle, Eminem surprised the world by releasing Relapse. The album sold 7.5 million copies, a testament to the lingering power of his name and his fan base's loyalty. However, the album was a departure from the ferocious energy that had made Eminem a cultural force. The raw, biting edge that had characterized his earlier work was now gone. His voice, once distinctively sharp with a raspy undertone, sounded hollow and less commanding. His rhymes felt simpler, and his attempts to shock and provoke seemed disingenuous. He adopted a strange, fake accent on several tracks, which felt off-putting and detracted from the emotional weight of the music. Despite the commercial success of Relapse, something was clearly missing. The magic of his early albums, the raw intensity, the lightning-fast flows, the fearless lyrical exploration, was gone. Relapse had its moments, such as the introspective Beautiful, a track that encouraged listeners to embrace their struggles and keep going, and Deja Vu, where Eminem opened up about his battle with addiction and the emotional turmoil that came with it. But even these tracks couldn't mask the feeling that the album was lacking the punch of his previous works. The energy, the drive, the passion, those elements had dulled. His comeback, while impressive in terms of sales, left fans feeling conflicted. They appreciated the fact that Eminem had survived his demons, but the album itself felt like a shell of what it could have been. In June 2010, after the turbulent years of addiction and recovery, Eminem released Recovery, an album that marked a significant shift in his career. The album was a testament to his resilience and determination, selling 15 million copies worldwide and shattering digital sales records. Recovery spent 27 weeks in the top 10 of the Billboard 200, reinforcing Eminem's place at the top of the rap game. This was a comeback of monumental proportions, and it demonstrated that the old Slim Shady was evolving into a more reflective, emotional, and aggressive version of himself. Unlike the chaotic, often controversial Slim Shady persona of his earlier work, Recovery was a raw, honest exploration of Eminem's struggles and growth. The album's lead single, Not Afraid, was a bold declaration of his recovery journey. In it, Eminem spoke directly to his fans, thanking them for their support and vowing to face his demons head-on. It was a far cry from the playful and darkly humorous tracks of the Slim Shady LP or the brash antics of the Eminem Show. This was an Eminem who had been through the ringer and had emerged on the other side stronger. His message was clear. He was no longer the unpredictable Slim Shady, but a man who had come to terms with his past and was ready to move forward. Tracks like Spacebound and Love the Way You Lie delved deep into broken relationships, reflecting on the pain and anger that came with love's complexities. Going Through Changes was a personal anthem, offering an intimate look into Eminem's battle with addiction. For many, this song marked a vulnerable moment in his career as he openly acknowledged the toll that drugs had taken on his life. You're Never Over, one of the standout tracks on the album, served as a poignant tribute to his late friend and fellow artist, Proof, whose death had left a deep scar on Eminem. The track was a reflection of his grief, his loss, and his struggle to move forward while carrying the weight of that memory. For many die-hard fans of his earlier work, Recovery felt like a departure from the raw aggression and dark humor that had made Eminem a cultural icon. The absence of the familiar Slim Shady persona left some feeling disconnected. However, the album was undeniably a sign of Eminem's personal recovery and maturation. It marked a shift from the shock value and anger of his previous albums to a more self-reflective, emotional approach. The transition from Slim Shady's manic energy to this more grounded, introspective version of Eminem was a bold move, but it paid off both critically and commercially. Eminem had regained respect, and his place in the rap game was firmly secured. Fast forward to November 5th, 2013, and Eminem returned with the Mathers LP2, a sequel to his landmark 2000 album. The album's release sparked a frenzy on the internet, particularly when Eminem dyed his hair blonde again, reminiscent of his early days. This visual return to his iconic look excited fans, many of whom had been longing for a return to the raw energy and audacity of his early work. While the Mathers LP2 didn't reach the same commercial heights as Recovery, it was widely praised by critics for its lyricism and production, with many citing it as a return to form for Eminem. The album marked the reunion of Eminem with legendary producer Dr. Dre, as well as a collaboration with Rick Rubin, whose minimalist and aggressive style helped shape the sound of the record. Despite some of the singles falling flat, the Mathers LP2 was marked by a return to Eminem's aggressive, high-octane flow. Tracks like Rap God re-established Eminem as one of the top lyricists in the game, displaying his unmatched speed, wordplay, and technical ability. The song, which includes a mind-blowing 97 words in 15 seconds, was a showcase of his skill and a reminder of why he was considered one of the greatest rappers of his generation. But the Mathers LP2 wasn't just about rapping fast or delivering shock value. It was also an exploration of deeper, more introspective themes. Bad Guy, the album's opening track, continues the story of Stan, one of Eminem's most iconic songs. In Bad Guy, Eminem revisits the narrative of Stan's obsessive fandom, but this time, the perspective shifts to Stan's younger brother, who seeks revenge on Eminem. The track demonstrated Eminem's ability to craft complex narratives and revisit old themes with a fresh twist. Headlights, another standout track, offered a heartfelt apology to his mother, Debbie Mathers, marking a significant moment in Eminem's personal growth. The song was a stark contrast to his earlier vitriol towards his mother, signaling a maturity and emotional depth that had evolved over the years. In recent years, Eminem has continued to evolve as an artist, releasing albums that span a wide range of reactions. Some have been lauded for their lyricism and production, while others have garnered mixed reviews. His latest release, Houdini, is another example of his attempt to capture some of the raw energy of his early days, bringing back the Slim Shady persona that first put him on the map. With Dr. Dre back on production duties, the song has drawn significant attention, debuting at #1 and quickly gaining millions of streams and views across social media platforms and streaming services. The track has a strong nostalgic pull, reminding fans of the days when Eminem's delivery was sharper, more aggressive, and less filtered. Houdini is a perfect example of the duality of Eminem's career. On one hand, it evokes the past, specifically the early days of his career, when he was an underground sensation with a distinctive, often unpredictable sound. The return of Slim Shady, with his blonde hair and rebellious attitude, harkens back to the era of the Slim Shady LP and the Mathers LP. This nostalgia is a key factor in the song's appeal, as it serves as a reminder of the controversial, boundary-pushing artist Eminem once was. Dr. Dre's production choices further enhance this nostalgic feel, opting for a sample that fits perfectly with the tone and vibe of the song. The instrumental complements Eminem's rapid-fire delivery and chaotic style, creating a cohesive and engaging soundscape that feels familiar and fresh at the same time. One of the most striking elements of Houdini is the sampling. Dr. Dre, always a master of choosing samples that match the vibe of the song, once again demonstrates his skill in crafting a beat that enhances the overall feel of the track. The sample adds a layer of nostalgia that hooks listeners from the very first note, instantly transporting them back to the early 2000s when Eminem's sound dominated the rap scene. The blend of old-school elements with a modern touch gives the song a timeless quality, making it accessible to both longtime fans and newer listeners who may not be as familiar with Eminem's earlier work. However, while the song has its strong points, particularly the production and the nostalgic pull of Slim Shady's return, the lyrics and overall flow don't quite match the high standards set by Eminem's earlier material. The song's lyrical content is reminiscent of his prime, but it doesn't hit as hard or feel as groundbreaking as his previous work. The return of Slim Shady as an alter ego is welcome, but it doesn't carry the same shock value or raw intensity that made the character so iconic in the past. The lyrics, while clever, lack the biting edge and unpredictable nature that once defined his rapping style. It's almost as if Eminem is trying to recapture the magic of his past, but without fully committing to the chaotic, unfiltered persona that made him famous. What do you think about Eminem's life and career? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.